December 11th. Good evening. This is the regularly scheduled meeting, December 11th, 2018, of the East Longmeadow Town Council. I'll open the meeting now with a pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we ask that you keep our servicemen and women around the globe, as well as our first responders, in your thoughts this evening. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, I'm required to say that this meeting is being taped and ask if there's anyone else in the audience who is taping or videotaping this meeting tonight. If so, please identify yourself. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, public comments. We have 3 individuals who have registered with our clerk to have comments this evening. Before we entertain that, I would like to just review for everyone's benefit the public comment protocol that the council uses. You must sign up in the clerk's office by 3:45 p.m. the day of the council meeting in order to reserve a place on the agenda. Each person on the public comment docket shall be recognized by the presiding officer and shall state his/her name and address for the record when called to the table to speak. Time allowed for public comment will be limited to 3 minutes for each individual speaking, unless that time limit is waived by the majority of the council. All remarks and comments shall be addressed to the council as a whole through the presiding officer and not to any individual member. Each person is asked to conduct themselves accordingly. If any person persists in disorderly behavior after a warning from the presiding officer, the presiding officer may order the person to leave the meeting, and that is pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 30A, Section 18 through 25. I will also add that the council will not engage in discussion with the speaker. Councilors may comment under council comments, but again, there will not be a back and forth discussion. And at the conclusion of the comments, the council actions would be to take the comments under advisement. So that being said, our first public comments tonight are regarding our current trash contract, and that would be Mr. Gustafson and Mr. LaRosa. You're welcome to come up to the table here. And okay.
Ken, actually.
Ken.
I'm Phil LaRosa, 61 Harwich Road. Ken should have been here because he and I met recently at Rockies looking for our barrels, which we couldn't find, and both being long-term residents, we thought it was ridiculous. I have had the same barrels since 2005. They are 45-gallon barrels. I have used them all that time, 13 years. I have not received a notice ever in my trash until the 27th that they weren't going to pick up my trash. They left my trash there. As being a taxpayer and not delinquent, I was ballistic. It seems inconceivable that we don't pick up people's trash. We have a neighbor across the street where there are 8 residents in there. Whatever trash they make, it seems the town should be responsible for it. My wife and I use a 45 barrel. It's never loaded. When we do have an event, be it Christmas, be it 4th of July, party, we're going to have some extras. And we're going to put them in a bag and put it either on top of the barrel or to the side of the barrel. And that has not been a problem for 13 years. it seems to me, I read Amy's comments in the reminder of the health director, and I have called the office, and I did not get a call back. It says that they'll be happy to entertain any comments. It wasn't, again, the 27th when I got refused. The next day when the trash guy was in the neighborhood, I went and confronted him saying, hey, what about my trash? This is nuts that you're gonna pay for my trash. What do you think I'm gonna do with my trash now? You didn't pick it up. And it seemed, and again, going back to Amy's article, that Republic has an issue with picking up our trash. It seems to me maybe we have the wrong contractor. It seems to me it's a basic service that this town should offer, to pick up our trash. We don't go to other homes and bring their trash to our home. It's the trash of our home. So on my hunt for a 35-gallon barrel, there is no such thing as a 35-gallon barrel. I'm here to tell you, I'm an official on it now. Rockies has 34 or 32, no 35s. Home Depot, Lowe's, do not have a SKU or a spot for a 35-gallon barrel. It doesn't exist. Where this came from, it's just surprising. Again, 13 years or 45, we lived with it. We don't put anybody else's trash in there but ours. And the issue of, oh, maybe you have a composting pile out back. Come on, we live here in the suburbs. This is not rural area. And beyond that, would you want rodents in your backyard? I don't. Let's just talk about the bags for a second. No, let's go back to the barrels. Let me tell you this, that I went to Rockies 5 times to get the barrels. And on 4 of those occasions, I ran into other residents, Ken, who's not here, who also had a similar opinion of what is going on. And one of the elder gentlemen said, you know, I called the health department. You know what they told me? To put it in a bag. And I said, well, what about the animals and squirrels getting into the bags? And he said, the health department person told me, well, squirrels hibernate in the winter. The gentleman said, not in my backyard, nor in our backyard. I just want to enlighten you on the bags. I'm curious about the cost of the bag. I've never used the bags. I bought a bag. I never went and got town bags. Seemed ridiculous to me at the time. And again, 13 years at least in this home, and we lived in town prior to that in another 10 years. Never had an issue with that. But the town is asking for $8.75 for 5 bags. $8.75 for 5 bags, $1.75 plus tax. So I went to Big Y and doing a little research. Glad Force Flex Plus, so it's a real heavy bag. These are all trash bags. I'm not talking kitchen bags, trash bags. $8.99, you'll get 25 bags. You pick up the store brand for $4.39, you'll get 14 bags. Dollar Tree right over here by Stop and Shop. For $1, you'll get 5 bags. I gotta ask you, where's this money go for these trash bags? Why do residents have to use that bag, pay a high price for it, well over the going rates? Why should we do that? Oh, Jesus, Santa Claus is here. I'm in big trouble now.
He's got a bag, maybe.
He's got a bag.
Is that a town bag?
It's
Wait a
not
second,
green.
is that a town bag? You gotta have a green bag. I surrender, I hope you got my point. It's ridiculous. I have had a 45-gallon barrel, as many of us have, to see a notice out of the blue, unacceptable, and then the charge for the bags, unacceptable. I hope you'll think about it. I hope other residents will come and make comment, because trash service should be as basic as our fire and police. Santa, how about a half a ton of coal this year, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the job.
Ooh, thank you, Santa.
Wow, Santa's going all out this
Santa's
year.
upped his game.
I think so.
He also some cookies. Kathy also looks a little thin though.
Yeah.
Hey, come over, Sam.
I think Santa's been on Weight Watchers or something.
Santa has, yeah.
You're out of roses?
Well, you know, I got a notice that East Long Meadow received the best town to live in 2 years in a row. So I figured it was worth stopping because these guys have got to be doing a great job. So, there you go. Merry Christmas. Steve.
I got something for you.
I'm sure you do.
There you go, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas.
Santa?
Wasn't expecting the crowd. I don't know if having a candy cane. Oh, here you go.
Thank you, Santa.
That's okay. It's all going in the same.
Is this free cash?
I think it is free cash, yeah. Pick coin a phrase.
You can use it for Christmas presents, or you can use it.
Sat down, did you coin a phrase?
Free cash.
Is this cash certified?
Yeah.
Here, I don't know if I have enough candy canes. I didn't expect a crowd. So, we'll start with the ladies.
Maybe the biggest crowd we've had since that housing project.
Yeah.
Heather, you want to address council comments after each one, or we don't wait until all go?
Wait till we all go to that. Okay, moving on. That's a tough act to follow. However, we have Mr. Jeffrey Bosworth, who's registered to speak.
Good evening. Jeffrey Bosworth, 45 Knollwood Drive. I'm here tonight. I'm presenting a voter-initiated petition, petition of no confidence in the town manager with recommendations that the residents of the town with recommendations by the residents that the town manager not receive a salary increase and that the town manager's contract not be renewed. By signing this petition, we, the registered voters of East Long Meadow, whose names and addresses are listed on the attached petition sheets, do hereby formally petition the members of the East Long Meadow Town Council based upon the performance evaluation and subsequent downgrading by a point in performance conducted by the Town Council of the town manager in a general position of no confidence in the town manager due to the following: the limitless power that has been misplaced in the hands of the town manager. Under the town manager, numerous employees with positive assets to the town have left abruptly over the past several months. The current climate in town hall causing this to be happening is unacceptable. Lack of competence in hiring practices. The town manager has not demonstrated fiscal responsibility as to salaries, other compensation, numbers, and types of positions filled when it comes to expending taxpayer dollars. Unwilling to act or failure to take appropriate actions based upon complaints or recommendations filed by residents and business owners in the town. Questionable practices in hiring or appointing outside firms to conduct business with or for this municipality. The town has gained a reputation of not being business-friendly and a difficult place in which to do business. This, coupled with a climate in Town Hall, is spreading an unfavorable picture of this town in other communities. This is not the reputation we residents want. We, the registered voters, believe this is not to be in the best interest of the town, and therefore, we request that no salary increase be given to the town manager. Further, we, the registered voters, request that the town manager's contract should not be removed. By signing this petition, I acknowledge that I have read the justification statement attached and agree with the contents. There's over 100 signatures in this petition, which I would like to have formally entered into the record.
Mr. Bosworth, you can give that paperwork to the clerk.
Okay. And just a reminder that the town council responds to the voters.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, council comments. Before I entertain any, the same protocol applies. Each counselor may speak and address any one of the public comments, but we are not allowed to engage in a discussion. So that said, is there any counselor who would like to speak?
I just want to speak to
Mr.
what Phil was saying earlier. And I've heard a couple people mention that they have the barrels, the larger barrels. And I don't know whether it's forced protocol or whether there's some reasonableness standard, but I was told a couple people had just 2 white bags in there, maybe repurposed Stop and Shopper's big wide bag. And because the barrel in and of itself was over 35 gallons, it wouldn't be picked up, yet clearly the contents of the barrel were well within the 33. So perhaps we can ask the Board of Health, who has the purview over this, to perhaps consider perhaps a more reasonable standards and during this transitional phase, even though we all agree it's been around for 10 years, just hasn't been enforced. All right, but maybe with the holidays coming up, and one of the things that we used to do historically, and I think Paul will remember, is we allowed an extra trash at the holidays. And since this is our last holiday meeting, I don't know again if it's our control or the Board of Health control, but certainly that would be very welcome if that were to continue for this holiday season. But also that that people actually, that the trash people, unless it's clearly a violation of their contract, and again, I haven't seen the contract that was executed before this was created, to actually look and say, obviously this is under 33 gallons. I mean, like you said, you can't buy a 35 gallon anywhere. And so I'm just asking through the council that the Board of Health give that serious consideration.
Okay. We'll make sure that gets directed to Amy, especially the piece about allowing an additional bag between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be our official green bag. It can be just another
I think it's an
bag.
extra whole pickup,
Yeah.
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So, through the chair,
Yes.
so this is something we inherited. It is not new. It's very frustrating for all of us, including myself, who has been, too lazy to go actually buy a barrel. So I've used green bags in the last 2 pickups because my barrel is too big. So Amy did address that with a resident today who had written in, and the fact was that when we started to hold Republic, responsible for the tonnage going up, therefore our bills going up, therefore we're exceeding the budget amount that we have allocated, right? So trash is a really expensive proposition for the town. As we were holding them accountable to it, then they held us accountable to the terms of the contract for 2 reasons. They have antiquated trucks that don't have the reciprocating arms to pick up larger trash. That's one issue. So there are some people that have a 45-gallon barrel that it's half full, that you wouldn't think that'd be an issue, but there's some people that have a 45-gallon barrel that are exceeding the limit of the 45-gallon barrel on every pickup, and they were taking everything. So the tonnage is going up. Our recycling it was flat, basically, which is a very bad indicator. So we're 2.5 years into a 4-year contract. We all agree that this needs to be addressed and assessed and find a partner that's going to work with us. But we as a group had to set some limits and hold them accountable. So when I think it was last holiday season, when we had massive trash issues and they weren't picking it up and trucks were breaking down, and their response was that our trucks are exceeding capacity because we're taking everything, so we're not even able to finish routes for the days, and then we had extreme weather as well. So there's no easy answer to it. If we hold them accountable to the contract, then we cannot exceed a 35-gallon barrel. If we don't hold them accountable to it, then we blow the budget item out, we raise taxes for that line item, and that's the problem we have. So, Don, I agree with you. Like, we got to get through the next 1.5 years. There's nothing we can do there. When they are in violation, we can fine them like we did before. But now if they're adhering to the contract and then they're holding us accountable to what we agreed upon with the prior administration, then we're in a difficult position. So you know, I think we should just at least keep discussing it, see if there's something can be done. Because if in a year and a half we say to a new vendor, we want you to standardize all the barrels, and they provide them to the residents like a lot of other communities do, then people are throwing another barrel out.
I
So
agree.
I don't like that either. I don't, but I mean, that's some of the facts that we're faced with. And I just want, you know, us to uncover every stone to make this less impactful for the community, because it's been very frustrating for people.
What I'm suggesting through the chair is we have people like Phil trying to comply and can't. So let's say, you know, unless the option is pay for the $1.75 bags, but if you happen to have a 45-gallon container, and clearly I'll point to this water bottle, it's not a capacity, it's right here. If they just take the simple effort of taking a peek and say, yeah, it is obviously well below 33 gallons, as opposed to just saying, because of the container, which again, you cannot buy, I'm taking them at face value, he's our expert, you cannot buy a 35-gallon to comply with the contract. It doesn't exist. And if people have this, and we're at the holiday season with, you know, extra trash and stuff, and they're clearly under the threshold, just because the fact that it's a 45-gallon, if they can lift up and it is clearly visually under 33 or 35, then take the trash. At least while this is being worked through. We can talk through Rockies, we can talk to others. But if you can't physically comply, then I think we need a temporary middle ground for the time being. Not saying if you have a 45-gallon, you max it out, we'll take it. No, I didn't say that. I said that if it's common sense, you can clearly tell that that thing is 60% full or what have you, then take it, like they did in the past if it's within that 35 threshold.
Thank you.
One last comment through the chair. So that apparently was discussed. I do remember that. That's now not what's in our contract. Now you have a contractual issue with, you know, this contract's been in place for 10 years. It was renewed prior to us forming this new form of government, and we're you know, 2.5 years into it. So now we have to get them to agree to that. So that's something to take into consideration as well. So.
Okay.
I wish there was an easier, you know, resolution to it, to be honest, but.
I would just add one more comment to the chair as well. We're also restricted to a weight requirement as well. So anybody that would want to jump up and down on a barrel and knock it down below the limits, but now you have a barrel with really 2 weeks worth of trash crammed into one barrel, we'd have to address the weight side of it as well. But the bottom line is it's a contract between the town of East Long Meadow and the trash company, and it should be able to be renegotiated based on the residents' wishes. We're willing to pay for something, we're not asking anything free. If the 35-gallon pail isn't working or the 50-pound weight requirement, then let's go back to the table and negotiate something for the town that works for our residents.
Anything else? Good. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, the town manager's report. Denise, you're up.
I'm writing Mike's comment because it's a good one. Okay. Good evening. The new chairman of the Community Preservation Commission has informed me that with some new members on the commission, the group is off to a strong start for current CPC requests and projects. Also, I've met with some members of the Historical Commission that have also experienced renewal. Welcome to new members of both those committees, and thank you for serving on them. The next thing I have relates to trash. I think we've talked about it enough, and it really just is more of the same comments and frustrations to, you know, we all experience the frustration. We understand we're actually looking at new possibilities for the next contract, but certainly to Councilman Kane's point, we can talk to Republic about the possibility of something, some change there. So we've received notification that E911 calls began coming into our Public Safety Communications Center on Thursday. of last week. Analysis has shown that taking these calls will not increase our call volume significantly, and we'll be receiving, I received notification today that we'll be receiving a $12,500 grant for the switch to adding that service. In addition to not really impacting our call volume, it also will give quicker service to the residents or those coming through town that are calling from their cell phones. I was also informed today that, well, this was last Friday, that Director Burns is working with another community to look for a number of grants that he's aware of that we've not in the past looked for. So we should be increasing the amount of grants that we get. With implementation of the new union contracts, most current and all new employees will be receiving bi-weekly paychecks rather than some weekly and some bi-weekly. Also, all new employees eligible for health insurance will be enrolled on the first day of the month after they start. Both of these changes, and there are significantly more, but these two point to some efficiencies, both administratively and some cost savings by doing that. All four unions agreed to a 2% increase for fiscal year 18-19. We received a $10,000 grant from our insurer, Maya, to assist with new OSHA requirements that affect the Public Works Department. The grant will assist with the purchase of trench box equipment. The Veterans Memorial Committee has organized its next fundraiser. It's a celebrity bartenders at Mario's Cafe Ambiance, and it will be Wednesday, January 16th. A flyer for the event is attached to my report. Finally, the last few planning board meetings have considered a number of matters that the council has had interest in, so I've attached copies of the marked agendas, and as always, LCAT has their meetings on video, as well as the minutes are online. I attended the tree lighting ceremony last Friday. Don Anderson was there. It's beautiful. It's as you come down North Main Street, it really is a beautiful tree. The Lions did fundraisers to change the lights over to the, is it LEDs? LED. So it really is beautiful. Very well attended event. I was surprised at the number because it was in the 20s, I think, that night, so it was pretty chilly, but there were lots of people there, and children, and Santa came on a fire truck. Tomorrow night is the Chamber Holiday Gathering for your, just as a reminder, and that's all I have. Good.
Thank you. Any questions?
One quick
Yes.
comment. I believe that was the 75th anniversary of our Lions Club putting that together.
Oh,
So
really?
a lot of kudos to them for
I
that.
wish they'd
Nice
said
job.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
I've got
Certainly.
a quick comment. To Denise's point, and for Joe's sort of edification, in her report, she noted that the Board of Selectmen put that 35-gallon requirement in 2008, which was long before Republic came here. So they were the ones who, in theory, were supposed to adhere to it, but it wasn't their contract. That was even before I was here. So but it's been around for that long. But it's just sort of got lost by the wayside.
Gotcha.
No
Yeah,
pun
no, I
intended.
will-
Not the curbside.
Not the
Not to be
curbside. Not the curbside. the wayside.
confused with the curbside.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, approval of minutes. In your packet, you have the November 27, 2018 open session minutes. Will you please take a moment to double check those, and I will, if there are no additions or deletions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 27.
Discussion?
Is that,
Yeah.
that was the next thing, comma, discussion?
Yeah, I just want to, the changes that I spoke about have been incorporated into these minutes, which are being accepted? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor of accepting the November 27 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And now we come down to item number 7, communication, correspondence, and announcements. Do we have anything, Mr. Florence? Nothing. Okay, moving to orders of the day. Item A, licensing matters. The approval of a change of manager for Bentley's Bistro at 53 North Main Street. Do we have those folks here this evening? Please come up to the table, please.
Hi, Joe Garcia, 15 Athens Street, East Long Meadow.
Alyssa Gagne, 137 Maple Street, East Long Meadow, Mass. And I'm the manager of Bentley's.
Okay. Council have any questions? Mr. Florence, was there a notice from the, about this?
Yeah, the only thing,
About, for the application to change the manager? Was there information still missing in the application?
yeah, there was a tip certification,
Okay.
I am tip certified.
you just need the paperwork.
Okay.
So,
I can bring that in tomorrow for you.
Ms. Gagne, yes, if you could just bring that over to the,
Yeah.
Mr. Florence's office, that would be fine.
Okay.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Is it possible to do a conditional approval with receipt of the
Yes, we will
tip
do the
certification?
conditional approval upon receipt of that, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be an issue. I will, if
I'll make
there's...
a motion to approve a change of manager for Bentley's Bistro, 53 North Main Street, to Alyssa Gagnon, contingent upon providing her paperwork for tip certification.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the manager change for Bentley's Bistro, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and good luck with it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Nah.
Excuse me. Item number 2, approval of the change of manager for the AMG Retail 1 LLC at 227 Shaker Road. Are those folks here? Thank you.
My name is Deborah Hanson, 337 Hart Street, Southington, Connecticut.
And are you going to be the new manager?
No, I'm
You're-
the territory manager. Tina Machero from Enfield, Connecticut is the manager.
Okay. So I'm looking at my notes here, and it says that the application is missing one item, and that is the proof of citizenship. That's a requirement by the ABCC.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought everything was there.
Right, we have been in contact with them, and they're in the process. She's simply getting a copy of her birth certificate.
Okay, well, that would be the same thing.
Same thing,
Right.
when she gets that.
So that's all you need is her birth
Right.
certificate?
Well,
Okay.
because it would say USA on it,
Right,
so.
okay.
So, like the previous license, we can approve this contingent upon receiving that information, and sounds like that won't be an issue either.
No, okay.
That said, I will entertain a motion to approve the change in manager for AMG Retail.
So moved?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there further discussion or questions?
Sorry, so the motion, does the motion have to state the conditional approval?
I think we simply have to say condition, we've
Contingent
stated it.
upon
Proof of citizenship.
Receipt and proof of citizenship.
Yeah.
Okay.
That said then, all those in favor of the change of manager for AMG Retail, please say aye.
Aye.
Those, any opposition, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you
Okay,
for your
so she
time.
just needs to bring it,
She just needs to bring it to the town clerk's office.
town clerk's office.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you very much.
And our final item under licensing matters is the approval of the 2019 license renewals. And in your packet is a spreadsheet of all of the licenses that are up for renewal, and that is an annual item for January 1st of every year. In addition to the various types of alcohol licenses, we also use automatic amusement licenses, common victualler licenses, entertainment, Sunday entertainment, and used car for the public's benefit. And there is over, Mr.
It's 140
100
change, yeah.
40 change, well, applications. So that said, I think in your packet as well, we have a email earlier today from Mr. Kevin Duquette, our building inspector, noting that there are 5 establishments who have some outstanding compliance issues that go hand in hand with the issuance of their various licenses. That, as you can see, am I allowed to state that into the record, these establishments? And they would be the Elmcrest Country Club, Mario's Cafe, Bentley's Bistro, Figueroa's Steakhouse, and the Shaker Bowl. And again, with the assumption that the establishments make these adjustments and are in compliance, there will be no issue with reissuing their licenses for 2019. Are there any questions?
We have this restaurant, is that just continuing it over till it's sold, or?
Well, yes, Mr. Florence, it's not a secret in town that Figueroa's Steakhouse is, I believe it's closed right now for business, but there's also a broker's real estate sign out on the front property.
Right. They are open when there's an event. They have been opening up, holding the event, and then shutting back down again, and they are in the process of selling their property.
Okay.
So I'm of the understanding that the ABCC allows the establishment that is up for sale to sell the liquor license as part of the sale within 9 months.
9-month period.
Of going on the, up for sale. If at that time the property remains unsold, then the license reverts back to the town. Does that same parameter apply to the other categories, common vic, the entertainment, the amusement? I don't think he has any of those, but he also has entertainment and Sunday entertainment.
Amusement as well.
And amusement, those are, it's the same thing? He can hold those for 9 months or they come back, okay.
Kathy, quick question.
Any other questions? Yes.
So has the 9 months started?
The 9 months started, I believe it starts when the for sale sign goes up, if I'm understanding that correctly, and that's just been about a week.
Yeah.
A little more than a week.
Just recently.
I think it's been about 2 months.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, at least 2 months. Or close to it.
So that's why I'm asking, like, what do we use for a start
I'll
date?
leave that to Mr. Florence to inquire.
I can find out exactly.
I mean, he may have been closed, but until he engages the broker, that, the contract date is probably what we'd have to comply with.
Right, so there should be a way to verify the real estate listing.
Of
And
course,
then,
yes.
yeah, I just want to make sure we're tracking it properly and
Yeah,
that there's then
exactly.
no discussion about
The start
that
date
wasn't the
both over.
start.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Issues.
Yep.
Yeah, we can look on
Let's see what
multiple
their name
listings,
was.
and it'll give you a start date and a termination date, so.
Yeah. Any other discussion about this spreadsheet with the various licenses? Any other questions?
Through the chair, I have one more.
Sure.
So no fee increase this year?
No, the licensing committee last year,
It's reviewed every year.
yes, in November, thank you, substantially increased fees across all categories to bring them more into the 2018 industry of fees. But we also recommended to the council, and you approved it, that the licensing subcommittee would review it biannually, so every 2 years, to see if there needed to be any adjustments. So everything stays as what we put last year.
Okay.
One more question through the chair. I was just, talking to Kevin. To follow up on the point about the 9 months, Greenwich, we gave them a beer and wine license. I don't see it on here, probably because it dropped because of the 9 months. And now they're being sold to that
They didn't renew
They
their...
didn't renew, okay. I wasn't sure if it was an automatic drop because of the length of time.
Okay, good.
Oh, delicious.
Faux delicious, yeah.
This is complicated. Further questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain that motion to accept as a group. Yeah.
That being said, I'll make a motion to approve all licenses renewals for January 1st, 2019, as referred to in Exhibit A, contingent upon the completion of the building inspector or building commissioner's certificate of inspection items for the 5 licenses as shown in our building inspector's email dated December 11th of 2018.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving of the license renewals in Exhibit A, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Before we get to 8B, financial matters, I have been asked to entertain, or I have had a request to take new business under 8D out of order to right now in the agenda. If that's amenable to the council, then I'll entertain such a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to move out of order and take item 8D, new business, at the present time. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously. So that said, jumping to new business, Mr. Fenney, the Draft Stormwater Enterprise Fund. As well as our Deputy DPW Superintendent, Mr. Christensen.
Good evening, everybody. I come to you this evening to obviously discuss the new MS4 requirements that has been imposed upon us from the EPA and the DEP. I had Mr. Fred Sivian come out during the summertime, explain to the council what the requirements for the new permit are going to impose to the town and the cost to the town for these new requirements. So I come before the council this evening to discuss the draft Stormwater Enterprise Fund bylaw. This new stormwater utility will provide funding source for the town of East Longmeadow to comply with the new MS4 permit by the DEP, the EPA, which began on July 1st of 2018. There are 12 surrounding communities that have already adopted this new funding source. Many others are working on a similar plan. The Board of Public Works at our last night's meeting has approved this bylaw moving forward. Therefore, that's why I'm coming to you next to get your recommendation or approval based on our discussions this evening. Operational cost projections for FY20 are at $260,900. Our projected revenue based on the new bylaw is about $289,075, with a balance hopefully within the account of about $28,158 once we provide all those necessary documents and items to the EPA and the DEP. And in short, the fee structure is set up based on land use code, which consists of 4 categories. Residential, which will be charged $25 annually, which equates to about $2.08 a month. Commercial properties, which is $100 annually. Mixed use commercial and residential, which is $200 annually. And large commercial industrial properties, which is $500 a year. That being said, does the council have any questions in regards to the new bylaw?
Questions?
Well, I'd like to make a statement.
Sure.
Since this is a new bylaw, we have a bylaw subcommittee. My recommendation would be to push it back to the bylaw
Yeah,
subcommittee
I
for
think
review.
that does have to happen. And then from there, it would be included, Mr. Florence will make sure that it's included. We're presently under contract with a vendor to codify and bring all of our bylaws and rules and regs up to the 2019, 2020 standards. And so it would follow that same path for inclusion.
Okay. Is that committee, when do they meet? Do they meet?
As necessary, so
Okay.
this would trigger the chair to call a meeting.
Okay.
That wouldn't be dragged out.
Okay. I just, like I said, I know we're in budget season, so I want to obviously keep moving forward, keep the momentum moving forward so we can obviously get everything in place.
To the chair, so if so approved, then when would the fund be established? Are we talking about next fiscal, or is this going to be established?
Yes, FY20.
So that would be July 1. Right. Any other questions? So, we need a motion then to create the bylaw?
Just to refer to the
Okay, so just a motion to refer this matter of Mr. Fenny's to our ad hoc bylaw.
I'll make
committee.
a motion to refer the draft Stormwater Enterprise Fund proposed bylaw as presented by Superintendent Bruce Fenny to our bylaw committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of forwarding this topic to the bylaw subcommittee, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The motion carries, and Mr. Federici is the chair of that bylaw subcommittee, so I'll leave it to you to reach out to your other members. Mr. Henry, I think he's here in the audience. Yes, he is. And Mr. O'Connor, you're on that as well.
Right.
We're going to try to get it done within the next week or so.
Right, to convene that committee and move forward with it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Item number 2 under D2, new business, the draft of the Complete Streets Policy. Mr. Christensen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for giving me a minute. So this is sort of a draft policy. The town has been registered with the DOT as a Complete Streets community since 2016. I think with the new government and staff changeover in planning and DPW, we kind of got left in the wind there. So we're trying to pick this back up. This is just a policy for the commitment of safety for all users on our streets of all ages and all abilities. So we're talking about bike lanes and sidewalks and sort of the new way of designing streets. This isn't really trivial. Doing the research not too long ago, I think they're up to about half of the municipalities in the state now have complete street policies in place. And basically, by making this commitment, we're eligible for additional funding from the state for our reconstruction of our roadways. So obviously safety being paramount, but we could all use a little more funding. So most of the communities around us, well, Longmeadow, William Street, just to, I'm sure maybe you've seen it, they received $200,000 from the state to help with that project. Agawam has had projects funded, West Springfield, South Hadley, East Hampton, Palmer. So we're kind of late to the table here getting funding, so we're trying to get this policy sort of moved forward. The next step is to really draft a letter of intent to the state that says we have 1 year to enact the policy. And as soon as they receive that letter, the clock starts. So we kind of wanted to get this out there before we sent that letter to see what, if any, interest the town has in sort of going the way, like you said, to the 2019. This is where things are headed. So I don't know if there's any questions, if anybody needs more information on what exactly a complete street is or anything of that nature. And obviously the policy's in a draft form right now. I've sort of reached out to planning and just to kind of get their thoughts on what they think. This is in line with our newly updated master plan and open space recreation plan. So we're just trying to kind of get to the table here for some of this additional funding.
Any questions from the council on this?
Question.
Yes.
So this is a policy. This is not something that's being mandated by the state, or
It is not.
is a bylaw?
No, it's a policy that is approved by the state. So they have a scoring system. The policy has to have a certain amount. You know, you have to check all their boxes, while still leaving room to tailor your policy to your community. So that's the next step is to have the policy approved by the state, then sort of a feasibility plan, prioritization plan for what streets this could work for. Obviously, it doesn't work for every street. The policy has exceptions, so we're not basically saying no matter, or any time we do road construction, we have to put in bike lanes and sidewalks because it's not always going to make sense. So there's a number of factors that go into it, but no, it is not a mandate.
Okay. Any other questions? I have another question.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, their timing is good. We actually discussed this in our last council meeting because we realized that there were a number of unclaimed streets in town, which we are losing X amount of dollars for each. I'm not sure how it's measured. Mm-hmm. Is it 100 feet of roadway, half mile?
Chapter 95.
The 500 feet. Right?
500 feet?
500 feet in order for us to pave that street or fall under the DOT standards, right? As far
What
as-
happens in the condition, and this
Well,
was briefly talked about? when
It
we talked-
also goes along with, you may have a side street that's 100 feet, but if you do a continuous pave that intersects another street and continues on, then it'll obviously fall within those parameters.
The other question is, what happens when a developer who posts a bond fails to fulfill that bond or walks away from it and it costs the town money?
Well, obviously, whatever's left in the bond, if it is not enough to complete the project, then the town would have to eat the rest of that money and come up with some kind of funding. I don't know as far as Chapter 90. I've never had that question presented to me as far as if we would be able to, I would say, no, we wouldn't be able to pave a street that actually hasn't been accepted by the town. So we would have to probably put up capital monies or something along those lines to find funding to complete that street up to the DOT standards.
I think we just also, moving forward, need to do a better job of staying on top of these developers, because in the bylaw, they have a time limit, which means they can't just walk away. And now their bond that's 15 years old is X amount of dollars, and now it costs 10 times that much to pay
And
the
that
road.
was the purpose of my question, is
Right.
that, you know, they post a bond for $1,000 and it costs them $5,000 to pave it, they're gonna walk away.
Well, right, exactly. And so these streets that we've inherited, yes, that puts us in a tough position. There's not enough money in that bond.
I just wanna make sure that the town roads are still cared for and that they will be dealt with by the town one way or the other. Either we go after the developers if they're still in business, or the town comes up with the money to take care of these conditions that exist on some of these newer streets that are popping up in town.
Right.
Yeah, and we've put together kind of a new inspection, inspection form, moving forward with any new development that's going on in town. Obviously, having people out there inspecting from as soon as they cut trees down and get out there and obviously inspect and make sure they're doing things within the town standards. So we are working on that, obviously moving forward to make sure we don't get in this predicament again, because we are seeing a lot of that is happening, and just over the years we can see streets that are 10 to 15 years old actually deteriorating. They're side streets, and it's like he said, they're getting left by the wayside.
And have not been
We're-
accepted.
We're stuck sort of, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We're stuck sort of in a legality gray area where it's not a town accepted street, so we probably shouldn't be there to begin with, but we need to make the road safe and sort of passable for emergency vehicles, so.
Well, I think my understanding was, for your question, is that if they're paying taxes, they deserve the same rights as every other resident on their street.
Understood.
So it should be cared for.
Exactly, that's what, yeah.
Yes. I mean, through this.
So,
Mr. Payne and then Mr. Anderson. Go ahead.
I would just think, going back prior to either of you sitting in this capacity, that there was a policy where instead of some of these developers posting bonds, we're posting letter of credit. Okay, so letter of credit, if the financial institution were to fail, which they have, the town lost its position. So you inherited some of this. It's not anything you created.
Right.
And most of these bonds that I've looked at were sufficient to cover the remainder of the project, and they're released in phases as the development is completed. So we have been covered. You've inherited some bad fortune in the past, like I said, through these letter of credits and failed financial.
We actually have changed some of those policies as far as releasing the bond in any increments. It's going to be once the project is completed, then you get your entire bond back. We will no longer be releasing percentages of bonds.
That makes better sense.
And that's part of what I'm driving to.
Yeah.
I mean, if they've got more in the stake, they're not going to walk away from it.
Right, exactly. So, like you said, we have an inherited problem. We have, I gotta say, probably 10 to 15 streets that are pretty old, so.
Okay. So you're saying 10 to 15 streets that aren't finished, or we're waiting on the developer to?
It may not be the street necessarily. It may be trees that haven't been planted, or
Drainage.
drainage, or,
curbing.
you know,
Right.
exactly. It could be minor things, but like I said, if
It goes to
the
the
bond money,
completion
like
of
you
the
said, was released in phases, and if it doesn't make sense, say if you have $5,000, you gotta plant 30 trees. People are just gonna walk away. So, and like I said, we have taxpayers that it isn't fair to, for them to bear the burden, I guess, in order to get these streets accepted and by the town and maintained correctly, so. We understand completely.
So we did talk about it after the last meeting where you brought it up, Don. Bruce and I talked about it briefly. And we'd have to come up with a plan to catch up because it was left behind. So what was inherited by this organization is kind of a challenge to get under our, control. They have to be inspected from what we talked about.
Sure.
And we need a list of all of that, and that goes to the planning department as well as Public Works. So we have talked about it a little, but it's a big nut to crack.
Yep.
But it's being worked on.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Good.
I'd love to, just one last comment, sorry, to the chair. I'd love to see, just kind of a breakdown of the liability and how we could bring it up to standard, what's left on the existing bonds, so we have a little bit of information on how to address it. And it's something that's going to have to be dealt with, so maybe, we don't meet again till January. If it's not ready for the first meeting, second meeting, but
Is that something you can provide for us, Mr. Fenny?
Yes.
Like a,
We'll have to work together.
right.
planning
We
and
understand. We
the bond
understand that.
folks and-
Yeah,
It's,
it's actually
a big project.
the collector's office, I
treasurer- the
believe. The
treasurer
treasurer
has the
collector
bonds.
actually has all the dollar figures.
Yes.
I do have
Yeah.
a small list. I don't know, like I said, that was an arbitrary number. It's in that range anyways, as far as some incomplete streets, so.
Yeah, so we can get the bond list from Peter and then from
Sure.
there, match up.
That's fine. Good. Further discussion?
Just to wrap up what we talked about last week is, I think what we need to do is understand that some of these streets may have been set up right back in the day, but if we haven't accepted them, we still have to maintain them. Because taxpayers, that's the responsibility. And by having them in now part of the town street, even if they don't have a sidewalk, even if they don't have things, because they were probably set up in the late 90s or whatever, before we put that in. I know we did one across from Parker Street that the developer went out of business and
Fenway
and we
Lane?
approved, yeah. So those are things that we have to look at, is trying to find ways to make these part of the Chapter 90. because you're right, they do aggregate into it, and we should have that. And, I mean, it used to be when we had town meeting, almost every town meeting, especially, my days on the planning board, we'd always be having a recommendation, DPW recommends and have a street. We haven't had one street assignment, street approval, since this new form of government. So that's got to change.
My only biggest question I have, and I haven't dug into it a lot, is who's going to petition to accept the street? You know what I mean? If the town actually doesn't own it yet. So those are some of the legal questions I guess I have to kind of figure out. You know what I mean?
It was done at town meeting.
Right, but that was the
Right.
builder or developer bringing that to the taxpayers.
I would say the
So-
planning board would,
But if
in
we-
this case,
If we get a
especially if
list
these
of,
streets are that old.
if we get a list of the bonds,
You know what I
then
mean?
we
'Cause
know
we don't
who
own
the
it, so-
developers were from
Right.
those bonds. We maybe can contact
Yeah,
them.
okay.
and
I
See
just-
what, well,
that
it
could
might
be-
be a little bit
Yeah,
work
it used
in
to be a
progress.
citizen's petition, you'd have like a bunch of signatures and so forth that people would do that, it would go to you guys, DPW,
Right.
DPW would say, we're fine, then the planning board would present it, and then town meeting would approve it. But we have a point, at this point, where the town is losing money, still taking the responsibility of fixing it, as they should, and here's an opportunity to put a tourniquet on it and move forward, not to have this mistake again.
Exactly.
And to do it. So we're fixing these streets, we're not receiving Chapter 90 money. That's got to stop.
Right, absolutely.
Do we need a motion? Motion to,
Be similar to the last
yeah,
one,
to,
the bylaw subcommittee.
But this isn't
this
a
guy,
bylaw.
it's not, it's a policy.
It's a policy.
It's not a bylaw.
This is a policy more.
We didn't take any action.
I guess I'd just like to send that letter into the state
Oh.
to say that we will, within 1 year of the date of that letter, get this policy brushed up and enacted.
Okay, so then the motion could be
Authorize.
move to authorize the deputy DPW superintendent to move forward with the complete streets policy application.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And good luck with
Appreciate
it.
it.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
It's good to hear that things are coming together and all the loose ends are being
Finally, thank you.
tied up.
Yes.
Lots of loose ends.
Yeah.
You're getting
Big
it.
ball of
Thank you very
yarn.
much.
You're welcome. Made a motion now to return to our normal order in the agenda.
Which is 8B.
Could I ask that we take C, since Carolyn is here and she's under old business, and that's, should be a quick thing.
Okay.
It's the last,
All right.
that chapter 40 that we've talked about a number of times.
We'll entertain that motion from somebody to,
Make a motion that we move, go to item AC1, and then after we return back to items A, B, and then 9, 10, and 11 in that order.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of what he said? No. Moving again out of order, but then returning to normal order, please,
One-stop shop.
please say aye.
Aye.
5:30.
Those opposed, please say nay.
So you can just.
Motion passes unanimously. So now we are under old business, continued discussion of acceptance of Chapter 40, Section 22G. Thank you.
So you may have gotten these in the last packet I gave you, but it's just kind of, it simplifies the process. Since you've accepted the Commission on Disability, you accepted that. This is just focusing on if we were to fine people for parking in a handicap parking spot, that money would go to a special fund that would pay for anything in regards to educating the public or any way to help that with those living with disabilities in the community. So that was just, if you go to that second section, it just kind of highlights the process of how that would work. And I know you had some questions about
The receiving of, should you receive grants, where would that go? And does it go into this account, or does it revert to another account with the treasurer?
I think Denise has that answer.
So I received tonight a visit from a little baby with our town accountant attached to her, and she had some of that information. So currently, any fine money goes into a line under miscellaneous, a miscellaneous budget line. She said it is insignificant.
The amount?
Correct. The amount is insignificant, maybe $400, $600.
A year?
Yeah, and it is collected by an agency called Kelly and Ryan that does our tax collection as well. They take a piece of the fee and then they send the rest to us. She said it doesn't really impact the budget in any way. It doesn't impact their work to have it under this miscellaneous account. However, if it's in the miscellaneous account, then any expenses that would be related to ADA couldn't be offset that way, nor would grants go into that account. It would be that the fund would just have that income, and any expenses would come out of the general fund. Now, to set up a separate account would then offset the ADA expenses with the ADA income. Again, an insignificant amount, but then it could be directly correlated with each other. That's the difference, and it could be like an enterprise fund.
Is Sarah Menard recommending that? Did you get to that point in the discussion? No.
Well, the baby started crying and it got kind of chaotic, but I think
baby
she said it really didn't matter either way. She can do it either way. There used to be a separate account, so it was that way before. She said it could certainly be done again, but it was so little that they did it under a miscellaneous account instead.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We're talking about, I mean, the funds are relatively insignificant because they're created from parking tickets if cited in a handy park zone. Would those funds still be insignificant if we were able to get grant money?
So that part of that doesn't really have an impact on pursuing the grants that we were looking at. The emphasis was on accepting Mass General laws for the Commission on Disability locally. That was the most important part. This is not a significant part piece of it, no. Right. And it is such an, I talked to Chief DeLassio again today, and he said it would be such a small amount. And again, there's no authority from the commission. You have the authority. Actually, I think the town manager has the authority. I'm not sure. But I think the important thing is that we're not talking about a significant amount of money. Sarah would have to do a report to, it might be the Commission on Disability at the state level. She would have to do a report on the expenses and the income on that. So there's definitely accountability, and again, it's such a small amount.
Yeah, my question was, is the amount going to change if you find another revenue source that would feed that account?
And Denise can correct me, that if we were to get a grant, it would not go into that account.
Separate.
It would be separate.
So grant,
so the amount's always going to be insignificant unless we have hundreds of handicap parking places and hundreds of violators.
An aggressive police department.
And a lot of enforcement.
Thank you.
We'd have to print new tickets because it would have to say parking violation for ADA violation in particular, so that when Kelly and Ryan took that money, they'd be able to tell us how much of it went to an ADA violation.
Okay.
So quickly through the chair. So this has kind of been my issue with this from the beginning, is that it's not creating a separate account. That's insignificant. The amount of work is net equal.
Yeah.
Having the account or not, it's under miscellaneous, having a separate account. It's creating a bylaw to have an account for an insignificant amount. That's not going to grow in size. We have ample parking here. You're really irresponsible if you park in a handicap parking with most of our public parking spaces. So then the private parking lots, I wasn't even clear how those are being policed unless somebody calls By the time they get there, Chief said in some cases they're already gone, so it's likely not gonna grow. I want them, whatever insignificant amount, we're gonna keep using that word, whatever insignificant amount, I'd like it to be used for the intended purposes. So if, and it sounds like we can, allocate that money or specify that that money be used without creating a bylaw, I would prefer to do that. That would be my, that's what I'm saying, so.
And we would do that outside of what this was trying to create.
Kathy?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Through the chair. I echo what, Joe's saying. I mean, imagine as a police officer, now you're carrying 2 sets of tickets, and for the absolute rarest of circumstances where you're going to issue a ticket on there, because you said you have to have these tickets delineated. I'd rather just find a way to fund it another way without having a bylaw mandating it.
I think we're all on the same page with that. So.
Through the chair, I'd also like to see the possibility of when the commission starts up, since we've already approved that they meet, discuss the issues at hand, and come back to us with potentially a budget. I think that being such a small amount and going through this big effort to create a bylaw and get all this in place, some of this can easily be addressed by them just creating a budget for education and marketing materials, which I think would be important in this process. And then if there's any big projects, they come to us with a list that, like everyone else does with a capital project, and we can recommend it or not recommend it.
And I would support that as well, because it sounds like they don't necessarily need a budget per se, but if you want to do education or things that maybe are going to help the community, this is not going to be the funding source.
No.
So in which case, you're going to have to come back anyhow. So I think that, that's a great idea. That seems to make more sense to me, that, okay, we feel like we're the committee, we're the subject matter experts, we agree that something should be done, or we want to do some education and we need $500. So I'd be more than happy to support that, And I think we can and we can accomplish that without the bylaw.
That could be through a budget process.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Does it make more sense to use the motion as it's been drafted, if everyone is against it, or just take no action?
We have to take an action. I mean,
Usually you'd vote.
the old ways, we would have to do a motion to pass it, and then if we didn't support it, to say no. So I don't know if we still do that, but it would be, I'd make a motion to support this motion, be seconded, and then all in favor, whoever, and then nay would prevail. So I don't know if we still do affirmative motions.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, that's what we used to do it.
Is that how you would see it, Mr. Torrance? I'll entertain a motion then.
Who has this one?
Got it right here. Want me to read it?
Paul's got it.
Entertain a motion to approve a new general bylaw to address a proposed local acceptance that will allocate all funds received from fines assessed from handicap parking violations to the town's Commission on Disability in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 22G, as read, into the minutes at the November 13th, 2018 and November 27th, 2018 council meetings.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
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 The motion.
Correction. Could you rephrase that? I want to make sure I voted the way I intended to vote.
Did you support going forward with this fund?
Do you want the
I'm
bylaw?
supporting with what we discussed at the table here.
Right.
Okay, well,
We do not need a bylaw at this
Right,
point.
okay, then your vote
funds.
was the opposite of what you just said.
Right, so you need to.
So your vote is a nay then?
That's
Right.
correct.
So let me start over, just for clarification. All those in favor of the motion as read, which was to approve a new general bylaw to address a proposed local acceptance that will allocate all funds received from fines assessed from handicap parking violations to the town's Commission on Disability in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 22G, as read into the minutes on November 13 as well as November 27. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The motion is defeated unanimously.
And again, just for summation, it wasn't a vote on the council against funding it.
Right.
It was the venue of funding. That's it.
Got it.
Because people say, you guys are anti this? No, this isn't the best way to fund it. It's de minimis. Let's do it the right way.
Thank you for all your work on that.
Thank you.
And maybe the motion
Thank you,
could have been written a little bit differently.
That's the way it is.
Okay, we are moving back into regular order, and that brings us to 8B, approval of prior year's bills. Denise, I understand you have this
Yes.
backup information.
Yes. So we received from our insurer bills for deductibles for lawsuits that were settled by them or claims that were settled by them going back to 2014. It was the claims or suits began in 2014, but were settled in the recent past, like within this budget year. When I spoke to our adjuster, I said that is not an acceptable way to do things going forward, because now their prior year's bills, they relate to previous matters, going back to some sewer backups. Some of them were sewer backups. That's why some are enterprise fund. Some were employment law going back to the prior year's government. Some of those lawsuits back then. And all of those came to a total of $43,274. $30,000 of it needs to come from the general fund because it's prior year, and $13,274 comes from the sewer fund because they were deductibles that had to do with backups in people's homes.
Any questions?
Through the
Tom?
chair. I'd like to see that breakdown of the cost and the cost associated with each of these issues that you mentioned.
I certainly can send that.
I'm not comfortable voting on a blank number of 30,000 or 43 or 13,000.
Certainly.
I want to see the details.
Okay. So it can be continued to the next agenda?
Okay.
Since I know that Sarah's out, and this is from Olga, but then, yeah, in the future, I guess anything that we have to vote on to move, I see a little bit of like, and we were kind of debating this earlier. Had we seen list itemized bills from anything that we've moved in the past? If not, doesn't matter, I guess. But I couldn't recollect it. I mean, maybe we haven't done many of them. But in the future, that would be easier. Then we can resolve it. We can prep for it before the meeting, ask specific questions, and then resolve it at the current meeting instead of continuing it. Because that's going to happen every time that we get something like this. We're just going to have to continue it. So we're just going to slow the process down.
Yes, Kevin.
Just to respond to you, Joe, we have gotten the list of previous year's bills, like what they were exactly.
Right.
Usually from Sarah. That usually comes in, so you know what the total is, but why it totals to whatever total. It's all individualized. Normally, that's something that is provided. We got one down to like 200, like $200 bill last year for, I don't know, paper or something like that, but whatever.
Right.
Didn't get submitted on time.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
There was a Mansfield paper company.
Yeah.
Right.
Some got missed.
Some got missed somewhere, but anyways, normally that's what Sarah does provide, so you know exactly where that 30,000 total came from, but.
Yeah.
I think there might have been some sensitivity to these because some of them had to do with lawsuits, but the lawsuits are actually resolved, so there shouldn't be any problem with.
So that should all be public record going
Yeah,
forward.
yes.
Otherwise, we can redact the name
Correct.
if you guys want.
No, I don't think you need to.
I mean,
They are public record at this point.
yeah. Okay.
I'll
Okay,
get
so
that.
that's tabled until January 8th, correct?
Additional question regarding this that you might want to do some research on. What steps have we taken to make sure that Maya doesn't throw this at us again after our budget process has closed?
I have.
So
That's
you've
what I
taken
spoke.
steps?
I spoke with the adjuster, and going forward, they will be billing us the deductible as soon as the expense reaches that deductible, so that it will be within the current year.
Good.
Unless it's on the edge of like a June kind of thing. Otherwise, you know, if it was June and the defense of the whatever isn't until August or September, that we start getting some expenses against that. So, but the deductible should come off very quickly going forward.
Okay.
They actually said it was their error, and they provided us with a $13,000 grant to sort of offset some of the inconvenience.
Okay, so the impact in the future will be minimized by the discussion you
Better
had.
Totally
accounting
minimized.
on their part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
So
Aaron.
so this would have been 56,000?
No. No, they are giving us a
Separate. Not a
$13,000
credit.
grant this year to, because of the,
Toward premiums.
because they
probably.
felt, yeah, toward our premiums,
there
because they felt
incompetence?
that they're, well,
It's okay.
we won't call it incompetence.
I might say that's
It was not a great practice, and I don't know if other towns experienced it, but we pushed back as soon as we saw
So the
it.
net result would be 30, not 43, after you account for the grant, which then would.
But that's in this current year.
It's current year.
The premium will be in the next.
So
but-
next year, what
fiscal year.
will we use the $13,000 grant?
It's going to come off our
It-
premium.
Yeah, it reduces our premium.
It's a credit, not a grant. Okay.
Well,
yeah,
they
credit.
called it.
Same there.
Same
Yeah,
thing.
they called it.
Struggling with that, okay, that's confusing. All right, so we don't need to plan for a grant, we're getting a credit off the bill.
Correct.
Yes.
They call them grants.
Regardless of the terminology. The bottom line is
I feel better.
13,000 we don't have to
13
pay.
grand.
All righty, let's move on to Financial Matters B2, Council FY20 Budget Priorities. And so you have in your packet the notes taken during our budget workshop back on November 13th, if I'm not mistaken. And now we're at the point where we have established certain priorities or wishes for priorities. Denise, the next step would then be, what do you want from the council? Marching orders, my words, for
So-
department heads?
Correct. What has kind of been lacking in the previous couple of years that we said we would try to remedy this year is what the council feels their priorities are, either for focus or for budget increase or keeping the budget at zero increase. As you and I talked about earlier today, I can do projections of 1%, what a 1% budget would be, what a 1% increase over last year. I can do projections, well, Sarah and I, that would say the contractual obligations are something that would be recognized from the start, and then 1% for the balance of the budget from there. There are a lot of different ways to cut it, but how the council wants to see that is something that has not been given as a directive, so I cannot give that directive to the staff. So I will do a budget letter. It'll be going out shortly, and it would tell the department heads what your priorities are so that they can start addressing that.
Discussion.
Two things, so I'd prefer to see 0 plus contract obligations, contractual obligations. That's just my opinion. And then the other thing, since I asked you earlier in one of my projects on here, do you want me to just discuss it really quickly and then we could remove it because it's not feasible?
Go ahead.
To provide just,
Yep.
yeah, if you want. Okay, so in meeting with the town building inspector, as well as the head of the DPW on the completion of the high school stadium project, which is now 8 years past. Unfortunately, there are some major hurdles that need to be addressed with that. So, you know, I've kind of challenged them to get some factual information on why we'd have to, you know, essentially create something that is way larger than really any other stadiums that I find in the surrounding areas. And the rule is basically if the structure is more than 200 feet beyond the main building, then you have to meet the standards based on the maximum capacity, potential capacity of that stadium, which then creates it like, you're talking like 26 urinals plus X amount of bathrooms. I mean, it's absurd because the maximum capacity would probably only be met a couple times a year. That's not to say the project should never get done, but then there's other issues that high school is so beyond its electrical capacity that it could not even accommodate another plug, and that's not an exaggeration. They're
That's
actually,
correct.
they have to disconnect plugs and reestablish them in other rooms. That's how bad that is in issues of, potential, issues with transformers. So electrical upgrade, you've got the maximum, you have to meet the current standards of the state for the building size, which would be huge. And then upgrading the concession area as well. And then unfortunately, you couldn't go straight out to meet the sewer requirements on Maple. We'd have to go up towards the front of the high school, which would require a pumping station with an astronomical number of like just $250,000 just for that. So it really can't be addressed as a standalone project. When and if the high school is proposing something, whether it's a major repair or a new building, at some point they're going to come before us. This has to go back under the umbrella of their bigger project, because I can't, I was hoping to raise a little bit of private money, do it over 2 fiscal years, and then have a less of a budget impact, thinking of a reasonable sized building with a reasonable number of urinals that would more than meet the requirements for 99% of the year, but it's just not feasible. So, therefore, I would suggest we just remove it from the priority listing and address it in future needs under the bigger project.
Okay. Any other comments regarding priorities, adding, subtracting,
I think if
direction to
we know
the...
ahead of time what the contractual obligations are, it's important. Because a skewed number looks when we say, like, if you came out and said the priority for the council is 2%, then you just get your contractual raises and nothing else. So if whatever the number that comes up, contractual plus 0 or whatever, and then work off to 0 from there and see what we can come up with. I think I agree with Joe on that.
So 0% and contractual obligations.
Since we just did so many contracts over, does it make sense to do 0 and then compound it out of the term of the contract so we can look forward essentially 3 years? I mean, almost all the contracts were just redone. I just want to know where we're going, a step ahead, because those are some big numbers.
They are big numbers. And keep in mind that we were also recommended by the Collins Center to do some adjustments to salaries as well. So there are some jumps there. There are some that are redlined, but there are some that were way out of proportion.
So I would say, include that figure, the Collins Center numbers, what positions have to go up or down or redlined or whatever, plus 0, plus a contract.
Some contracts for 2 years. I think I extended, I did 2 2-year contracts for 2 unions and then 2 3 years to start staggering them. But
yeah, I mean, if it's not ridiculous, just 0, maybe plus 2 years, if that would take us to the edge of the next contract renewal, just to see where we're going. And then we're going to have some other things to address with the school department at some point, because I believe they find out this week. Is it not this week?
It should be very soon. To my knowledge, they've not heard back from MSBA, but historically, it is always before the holidays, which is fast approaching. As well as the school department has at least 4, possibly 5 bargaining units, so they would have to adjust their numbers as well to reflect. No.
So, was it the union? The main group, didn't they just renew it for 3 years?
Yes.
That's all the teachers, right?
Correct.
Yeah, Unit
That's
A.
Unit A is their
Unit A.
largest group of individuals, the teachers.
Unit A.
Yeah, but they have paraprofessionals, cafeteria, kitchen,
Janitorial,
custodials, secretaries.
Okay.
So there's 4 or 5 there, but and other than what we discussed with Unit A being for this present year at 1.75%, I'm not aware of what the other parameters are for raises, but certainly Gordon can factor that in when he sees your instructions.
We also need to keep in mind that health insurance, which is a huge number,
Is going up. There's a surprise.
I mean, it's they usually predict an unbelievable number, an increase sometimes in double digits, which doesn't end up there. But even a 6% increase in health insurance could gobble up all of the, that zero increase.
So this came up in year one. We're essentially part of a co-op.
Yes.
Correct.
And, what bothers me about a co-op is we could be a very well-performing group in a co-op, or we could be a very poor-performing group in a co-op. And I don't know the last time we've gone to the market, but I would be willing to allocate some money to a third party to do an evaluation, not go directly to a broker, but to have somebody take a look at a semi-self-insured plan, because we're large enough to actually look at that for the main population, or potentially go to the open market on our own dollar and see if we're attractive enough. Because I don't know anything about this group. I have no information from them. This is one of the second largest expense related to employment, and we really don't have any information. So it's a big project, it's an undertaking, but I would want a disinterested third party, and there are people out there that are like essentially independents that will help you evaluate, and they'll take your claims history and they'll research it and go to the open market for you and get potential quotes as we come up on our next renewal. You can't do it too far outside of it.
Because your experience changes.
Your experience changes, and when you have over 100 lives, they actually look at your claims history.
Absolutely.
So
and
it
they
depends
should.
how we perform. We may not be performing well. If we don't perform well, then we may not have a choice. But I just don't know if that's good or bad, because we don't have any metrics to measure.
Are we bound by any parameters in the Scantic Valley?
I don't
Regional
know that we
Trust?
are. I have not been extremely happy with that, and Sarah and I have had the conversation of doing exactly what Joe said. I have done it before, and it is an arduous process, but you get a third party that comes in and gathers all that claim information and analyzes it. It's almost too late to start that for this budget year, but certainly
Well,
something
it bears
that-
looking at,
yeah,
because nationwide,
we can put the
healthcare
plan-
costs are
it's
just
gonna be-
unmanageable.
Yeah. And without being in with the Scantic Valley group, right now, we have a lot of options that maybe there could be some improvements made into what we're offering, the affordability of what we're offering. So that's, I agree with Joe.
Do we know, through the chair, which towns are part of the Scantic Valley as far as opting in specifically to this insurance program?
I think Long Meadow, I know Long Meadow is. Wilbraham is. I think Hamden is.
There's at least 5 in
I was
there.
going to say, I think there's one more, and I'm not sure which that is.
Oh, yes, the Lower Pioneer
Oh,
Valley
the
Collaborative.
Collaborative,
Yes.
so that's the school. Yeah.
5. Yeah. Well, that bears looking at then.
That's a, I
Probably
agree.
for FY21, but nonetheless, time to get going on it.
When is our plan year renewal? Is it June?
Yes.
When do you renew benefits?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can evaluate it this year.
When do we renew No, I think,
You would switch your carrier on it makes more sense to switch your carrier on the renewal date.
yes.
So you'd need to know,
And they give us budget projections for the coming year, like in February, March. So I can look into it and see what it
because
would
you're not going to shop,
entail.
generally you're
Yeah.
not shopping more than 90 days out. You're switching vendors.
Getting the claims data when it when it's
That
from
might
a
take 3 years.
collaborative, may be difficult, because we're now part of that larger group, for good or bad. I mean, as a performance, once we pull ourselves out, we may find that it's like, oh, let's put ourselves back in there. 'Cause
And this goes back to, you know,
A
my.
third-party review.
Well, a third-party review, but a benefits administration tool would give us all the data that we needed, give us our ACA compliance and all the other stuff, so we're moving towards that at some point. I know you guys are vetting that out, but then we control our own information.
Right.
It's really critical. I mean, you don't have an organization of this size with paper-based benefits administration. It's just crazy. It's extraordinarily dangerous to do that. How we're not, I mean, I guess we're in compliance because, or maybe we're not, but
We are in compliance.
So
that's by luck.
to Joe's remark, what progress are we making toward securing a software piece for that?
We have done the
benefits.
request for proposals. We have gotten 7, I think. They're very complex, and Sarah and Ryan and I have looked them over, and I really said, this is above my depth of knowledge to understand how this all comes together. We have gone to a third party for, I think it's $1,200, that they will vet out the top 3 for us, so that they can tell us what the strengths and the weaknesses in each of them are, because some of them are like a book, and it goes into such depth about, you know, ACA and all of that, that it's just really above any of our expertise. So, in fact, I talked to them last week and said, where are you on getting this done? The person that we were dealing with was on vacation. She's back. She said she asked for the emails for all those folks, which she had actually in the documentation. So she's putting together recommendations for us.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Tom.
As I look through all the budget workshop notes that we've been working on and put together, a common theme that I see that I want to make sure gets incorporated into this budget process is we've asked for organizational charts by department, department head staffing needs, looking into the future, what their projections are for staffing. That brings up the main question of what did it look like last year?
I'm doing that.
I want to know what it was last year and what it is this year, so we
Yes.
can see the difference in the comparison and also the salaries, which we have never seen. And I'd like to see that. I noticed that.
By department?
By individuals and then by department. When I looked online, it was online some years ago, if you looked on the checkbook, and it showed the salaries, and it's been taken down, as far as I can see.
It was requested one year as a special request by a former selectman, and never asked for again. It's a very difficult thing, and there was a lot of pushback from employees that they felt that that was something that was a little offensive to them to have their salaries all put on there. It is absolutely public information and can be done, but it was never requested to be put back on. That was an exception. Ryan Quinby had been asked to do that as a special something.
Okay, I'm not suggesting we put it back on the web, but it's not available, and I haven't even seen it. So I'd like that to be part of the budget process. I think that's an important piece of it. Salaries are one of our biggest expenses in town, and the OPEB responsibilities that go with that, and I don't know what that is.
I personally would disagree with that. I would not want to see it in an individual list. I do want to see the amounts per department would be helpful, but I definitely do not want to see it on an individual basis. I don't think that serves any purpose.
To jump in, the majority of the salaries in the bargaining units are bargained for, and it is what it is. So, but by department, you could see with the increase what that number looks like, but to say that employee A, employee B, employee C are being paid too high or low when they're inside a bargaining unit, we don't,
Certainly
that's
the
not going to be
contracts
meaningful
are-
for us.
Yeah, and the contracts are certainly available. So I can, but they're again, public information. I'm used to in the past, where I was from, we actually had them available to anybody. The contracts are available.
Through the chair, in the school, so, didn't they break down the individual salaries for all the school personnel? I remember seeing that somewhere, and I
At
don't remember
one,
where I saw it.
well, it's a matter of public record. I do believe some time ago, before the council became the council, there might have been a listing at one point, but it's a good 6+ years
Okay, so
ago.
it's been some time since they
Yes,
renewed that
yeah.
process? Okay, so I would just go with, as Joe mentioned,
Departments.
you know, the bottom line number by the departments.
I-
But a true listing of the org charts which you started. But I want to see what it was last year as compared to this year.
So I have already started getting org charts. I don't know that I have them all for last year, but that should not be a problem to get them for last year as well. And as for the budget sheets that you're getting, my thought, and I think I've already shared with Kathy, is that we have a line that shows the salaries for each department and a line that shows the other expenses for each department. What was given in the past was what I had inherited, and
Yeah.
I didn't get feedback that it was not the right way to do it, so we can certainly change that.
Just a quick thing on the insurance, it looks like, according to the Scannick Valley last meeting in September, Health New England has recommended a 30.2% increase.
30?
30.2.
Need to shop it this year.
Yeah.
Well, they've
Yeah, I
been.
mean, Health New England. Let's
They've-
shop it.
Yeah, they've also been supplementing it. They have a trust.
Scannick Valley Trust is actually supplementing that 30.2% increase based on their funding, but their
But that's a
funding is
ridiculous
short.
amount of money.
Well, and
Their funding is not what they anticipated that it would be either, so what's left in their bank account isn't as much as they thought it was gonna be.
That's a
So the
ridiculous.
money to
that's
defer that
impossible.
payment, that 30% increase, isn't as much as they thought it was gonna be.
Well, that, back to
You
your,
owe it to the,
to
you owe
your
it to the
point.
employees, we
Well,
owe it
that's
to the
fair is
residents
fair.
who pay
The
for
taxpayer.
it.
It's a
But
difficult-
we also owe it to the employees who are then going to get a, equal or diminished service for an increased amount. And listen, this is a nationwide problem.
Correct.
But in Massachusetts, we have had the precursor to the Affordable Care Act. That's abnormal to have that kind of increase. That means the whole group is not performing well. That's a really bad indicator. That also means it's going to be a really bad indicator when you try to go to market, because nobody then wants to touch you. You're like nuclear, because they're going to
Yeah,
ask for your,
stats.
they're going to ask for that renewal base, and then you have to break us out versus the total group, and it's going to be a bit of a mess. We may not have a better option, but
Well,
it's
it
really,
behooves us to look,
that's
investigate.
not good.
I can certainly call some brokers to.
okay?
I just have
Good,
one
Joe.
comment.
Other priorities? Go ahead.
The only comment I had on the top of my list was quarterly meetings, and what I meant by that was maybe have an agenda item every 3 months out to visit some of these areas, so we're not attacked with it in the last hour, if you will. There's quite a bit of, moving parts to everything we're talking about here, and I don't think it's unreasonable to maybe spend a little bit of time every 3 months revisiting some of these areas. So.
By some of these areas, what do you mean, like budget? Like an update on the status of the budget, or I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, because it's a moving target. Things are changing, some of those things that we all mentioned. And if we could spend, if it's even 15 minutes every, quarterly, just to assess which way are things moving.
Like a check-in, like where we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So we're about to close Q2. So where do we stand year-to-date on Q2?
Exactly.
I can add that to my report. I can add that to my report.
I'm not trying to add more workforce, but I think
No,
it'll
no,
save us
Well,
work.
it's a
but
way
it'll
to,
keep us on
looking at that.
to
track.
get a sense of our status going forward, and then you don't
I like
have
that.
to
Right.
take a large bite out of the apple all at once.
I'm
Yeah, I think
reviewing.
I think it's a great idea, because even if, like first quarter budget to actual. So we
That's
see where we
easy.
stand, we see what the budget's supposed to be for that quarter, and then do it as you go along, and then as you get to the third quarter, all of a sudden you realize, we've got an issue here, because we're at 90% of the budget with
And we're
3
only
months
3 months
left,
left.
or vice versa, we're doing well, so I think it's a great idea.
That's an easy, I'm
Munis, we can-
constantly
yeah.
looking at the budget, so.
And just to touch on the insurance thing, enter $500,000 under.
You're so full of good news tonight.
Say that again?
Targeted fund.
Follow that law.
So it says the
Excuse me. would you
unreserved
want
fund balance at the end of fiscal 18
Santa Claus over here.
is $2,625,206. Under the balance, policy target in the amount of $519,436. So they anticipated they were gonna have a certain amount, and they're $500,000 short.
I'd like to add to my request, I'd like to have a representative from there. come
I was
Discuss, like, I think
thinking
they
the
ask
same
us some
thing.
questions.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't, I'll write the questions down and give them to Kathy to ask nicely.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we could have them come and report to the council.
That'd be
Th-
great.
There's no harm in
part of
that.
the- as
Well,
part
that's,
of
I mean, for the record, there is a
financial report.
representative
Is
from
Rick
town
still in
that
that group?
goes.
Rick Green?
I don't,
No.
I've only
No, he's
attended
not? Okay.
a couple, but
he
I
would
don't.
be-
Kevin's right, there is a representative
There's a
assigned to the
representative from
town.
town that's on
There's
there.
Corinne and
Corinne's
the
on it.
HR person and Sarah. So,
Right.
yeah.
Board members. Yeah, it was just Karen when she was here.
Yeah.
And Sarah does attend
Sarah
all of
goes.
those?
Sarah goes with.
No.
And I
suppose.
think the chairman may be the finance person from Hamden.
Arlene Miller.
That's Arlene
Arlene
Miller.
Miller. Miller
I don't know who
is
that
the chair.
She's in Long Meadow, isn't she now?
Oh,
Yeah.
Long Meadow, yes.
Yeah, Long Meadow.
Yes. And she's very sharp, I'm sure she could come.
Sorry
Okay.
for the good news.
Any other good news?
No,
Mr.
I'm not gonna
Scrooge?
look at anything else.
Please.
30%'s enough.
Are we, do we have any other, Denise, let me rephrase it. Are you clear on the kinds of things the council's looking for now?
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe we could sit and just
Sure.
be sure that I'm addressing them all, but I think I get it.
Good. Okay. Moving on to number 9, we have no public hearing scheduled. Number 10, executive session. There is none scheduled for this evening. The only thing left to speak about is, unless there's other issues, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You're quick. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:46.
Can't vote both ways. This is in Chicago.